Yeah.
Hey, hi Siddhant. How are you doing?
Hi, Vandar. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So how was your day?
It was good. I mean, it's like 8 p.m. now on a Friday, so
Mm,
ready to end the day. How was yours? Hope I mean it's the end of the weekend, so I'm hoping
yeah.
it's a nice week. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. So I think just to brief you about the format of the interview, I will
Mhm.
mostly ask you a few behavioral questions and questions based on your resume.
Mhm.
So to start with, can you introduce yourself and what you have been doing for the past few years?
Yeah, sure. So as you already know, my name is Siddhant, and I'm currently a master's student at UC Irvine. I'm majoring in computer science, and during my undergrads, I've also majored in computer science. So it's kind of I've just continued my passion for the same. So it's exactly like I wasn't really into computer science when I started my undergrad, but once I started to know more about the subject itself and the field itself, I decided that I would like to pursue a higher education in the same. And in regards to what I've done to explore more in the field, I have interned at Volkswagen as a software developer intern and a user experience designer intern. So during my time at Volkswagen, I have worked, as I mentioned, two roles. So during the first half, I worked as a UI designer or a UX designer, and I was tasked with developing company specific designs and making sure that these designs are in accordance with the designs which have already been existent. Which have already existed for the longest time with Volkswagen. And the time when I joined, they were more in a transition phase and they were trying to get into a more modern design and a more responsive and component based design. So they had also started integrating React in order to develop these designs. So this was a good opportunity for me to shift from the design phase to the development phase as well, as I had some small projects during my undergrads in React and JavaScript. So I shifted from a UI designer role to a software developer role and started working on developing the designs which I created by myself. So
Great.
aside from that, I also have a small, like a 3 4 month experience in another startup called BizDoc,
Mm-hmm.
where I primarily worked as a UI development intern. And since it was like my first internship, I didn't really use any heavy dynamic languages or something. I just used basic HTML and CSS to develop the components which the design team and I came up with. And
Mm-hmm.
currently, I am working under a professor in UCI. So I'm working with artificial intelligence and making sure that. So you must have heard about all the new self-driven cars and everything. So I'm working on the
Yeah.
driving part. Yeah, exactly. And so the whole point of the project is to make sure that these autonomously driven cars have their security sorted out and to make sure they are able to handle all the attacks made on them by people who don't want their success. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the basis about me, and yeah, that's all.
Oh, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I can see that you have like worked in a couple of internships.
Mhm.
So can you tell about some project or some task that you are proud of in any of those internships?
Yeah, so there's one particular task, or maybe like a project-based task that I'm particularly proud of is when during my time at Volkswagen, I was, as I mentioned before while introducing myself, that I was both a UI designer and a software development intern. So during my time as the UI designer, I was tasked with coming up with a reusable component design library. So this was made by me and my manager using Sketch and Adobe XD. So the whole point was to make a design library component which has a plethora of reusable components which anybody, including designers and developers working on a particular project, can access. So I worked on a PressDB project, which was basically a database for a lot of numbers related to automobiles and individual chassis for a particular car. And so this actually helped a lot in the whole design process to all the other developers and designers involved. And this really was a huge achievement for me in the designing phase as well. because this was my first time I was using Sketch and making something like this. And following that, to add on to the achievement, I also got the chance to develop this myself and make use of tech stacks such as React and JavaScript to develop these. So this just made uh, made it obvious that my task to make the design system actually came in handy, because when I was developing the components themselves, it actually really made my work really efficient. So that is something that I'm really
Okay.
proud of in my internship.
Okay, nice. Uh, so so were you like working across internships and your current role at UCI? Did you had to where were you did you face a time where you had to like juggle between different responsibilities and manage different projects or stakeholders? And if yes,
Yeah.
how did you manage that?
So fun fact, yeah. So right now I'm also working, as I mentioned, I'm working under a professor, and I'm also working as a graduate student researcher. So I am
Okay.
currently juggling between tasks, and it's actually I've managed to do it like in a very proper way, because even though the timings clash sometimes and both of the tasks have specific deadlines, if you keep from my experience, if you keep a very well structured day, then and have some specific times for your specific task, and more than specific, have some realistic expectations and deadlines, it really helps in keeping both the job tasks alive and meeting all the deadlines which are necessary. So yeah, so
Mhm.
like currently I am juggling between two things, and it's hectic, I would say, but it's actually very much doable if you have a particular realistically based schedule.
Okay, nice. Uh, so yeah, and so in your experience, did you ever come across a challenge which you were not able to figure out initially, but then eventually you worked yourself through it and then solved it. So can you share any such experience that you had?
Yeah, so I mean, there have been multiple experiences like this where I've come across a challenge and I have to like ask people for help or aid to solve this. But I would share a very recent one where, um, so basically, my task under the professor was to go through a huge code base which was written by a team of developers from a company belonging in China. And I had to basically try and reverse engineer the whole code base, which was every file was around 3,000 lines long, Python
Mm,
code. So I mean, it was a lot to figure out what exactly is going on, which API endpoints are being called, where is the data getting rendered from, where is the data getting called from. So, I mean, is it before the sign, is it after the sign, and so which session has what? So, for that, I
mm,
mean, theoretically, I could try and figure out what was going on, but when it came to the implementation part, I really struggled, because one of the main reasons was that they were using Docker to run the entire web application, and for me, I am not really familiar with Docker, so it was a whole new
mm,
concept. So in order to solve this, I myself tried to learn a little bit of Docker and like get the basics cleared, but that wasn't much help, because honestly, it was a very, how do you say this, like the entire application was entirely integrated with Docker, and if I'm starting from scratch, it was a little bit hard, and I was on a deadline as well. So the solution
mm,
I came up was by learning Docker myself, I also asked the professor if he can help me find someone who has experience in running applications to Docker, and that turned out to be the best decision, because he indeed helped me to find someone, and we together actually ended up solving the problem and completing the task before the deadline. So yeah, that was how I
mhm.
tackled a very recent challenge.
Nice. Also, you must have come with situations where you did not have all the requirements, uh, specific requirements in the beginning of the project. But anyways, you had to start with the project, and during the course of working on the project, you had to like reiterate or then you accommodate some changes
Yeah.
after you started. So can you share how do you handle these situations?
So basically, you're asking if I ever had an experience where, just to clarify the question, where like
Mhm.
I didn't have all the resources available at the start, but still I had to get started on the work.
Yeah, like navigating through vague problem statements.
Uh-huh. So I think this, I mean, it's going very far back, but like the first time I experienced something like this was in my first internship, BizDoc. So I was tasked with creating a lead management system, and I was very new to the entire concept. But since it was my first internship, I made the mistakes of not clarifying my doubts and asking for more information regarding the task in order to complete it in a proper manner. So I ended up doing with what should not be done, and that is actually get started on the task so that I could meet the deadline, even though I did not know what exactly the system required and what were I did not completely understand the requirements. So in order to like, I mean, it turned out pretty well because it was an iterative and a learning process. So the more I started doing it practically, the more I myself started researching about the problems that faced. So that eventually helped me get all the requirements or the solutions needed for that particular task. And yeah, that is one of the very first experiences I had in such a manner.
Okay. Nice. So I can see on your resume that while you were working at Volkswagen, you designed portable UI components using React.
Mhm.
So so did you so how did you like decide what what part of the feature should be encapsulated in a component, and how did you decide what the component should do, and how did you isolate those components?
So there's a very basic answer to this one, because actually it wasn't my personal choice to make specific UI components. I was assigned these, like which components have to be made into reusable and which have to be static was assigned to me. So features such as like a drop down menu or like buttons or like let's say a slider window or a carousel or something, these features have to
Hmm.
be repeated everywhere. So these features had to be reusable and portable across different platforms. So they had to be dynamic for like the Windows system, the Mac OS system. They had to be dynamic for a Firefox browser, for a Microsoft Edge browser or something. So that was
Hmm.
exactly, so it wasn't exactly my decision. It was given to me by the company and was already stated in my job description and which component I had to make it into a reusable one. So yeah.
Okay. Uh, so while working as an intern or right now at UCI, you must have faced difficulties, and in the process, you must have realized what your weaknesses are or where you should like areas of improvement. So can you share a few of them?
Okay. So areas of improvement. I think the most major point where I need improvement is getting stuff done in a required way. So basically not trying to do something extra or not trying to do the bare minimum and getting away with it. So sometimes
Mhm.
when the task is too difficult for me, instead of communicating more with people and the managers responsible for that task, I try to do the bare minimum, get it working, and then during the how do you say this, during the review part, then that's the time I ask questions. So I think the area where I can improve is get everything cleared out for a particular task right at the start
Mhm.
instead of just diving into
Okay. Yeah, that sounds correct. Because if
it.
you like start without knowing all the requirements, it becomes difficult
Yeah.
afterwards. Yeah. I think that's all from my side. It was nice to meet you. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I think I currently don't have any questions for you. That's all from my side as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That
Okay.
was good.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.